Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to The Lock Shop. What's going on, gang? Huss, Jake, and Patty today. The three-headed monster is Dusty. Is in Regina tonight to call what should be a hell of a game in the Canadian Football League between the Montreal Alouettes and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We'll hit on a few of the big topics, and then we're going to dive into some of our favorite win totals and more for NFL futures going on. Fellas, what's going on? Patty, how are you?
Doing good, boys. Doing good. Excited to talk about the NFL season. We are so close. And I just threw this tweet out here. I don't want to wish away everyone's summer. I know everyone's enjoying themselves, going to the beach, going to the cottage, watching the CFL, maybe enjoying some baseball. But I just had a flashback, a vision of me sitting on my couch and betting over 3.5 field goals in an NFL primetime game, and a smile just came upon my face. I can't wait for NFL season, boys.
You know, I'm sort of with you. I remember as a kid, like these last 2 weeks of August, when you have it's like the Sunday scaries times 100. You know, you've got 10 months of school starting right away. I'm not like that anymore. I can't wait to get on the other side of Labor Day and get to the NFL season. And Jake, you've been busy not only getting ready for NFL, but I know I've seen been looking at some college football win totals as well. How's the prep for college season going?
Slowly but surely coming along, but Huss, it is right here. Like next week, we're going right into week 0. Not a ton of games on the week 0 schedule, but a few good ones. We can get a little taste of some college football before we get into a big week 1 and then a big week 1 of the NFL to kick things off. I want to say another thing too. I just noticed this as we're all sitting here. Huss has got the Kingdom shirt on. Patty's got his Bills hat on. I got my Patriots shirt on. We're all repping. We did not plan this ahead of time, though, folks. We didn't speak anything on outfits, but it's a good little trio of our teams here.
That's just the vibe right now. Everyone's optimistic. Everyone's fired up. Saw your Pats last night. Did you watch the preseason game? Any takeaways from the game against Philly last night?
So I don't watch preseason, man. I'd have to be betting on preseason to sit down and actually watch that. I was actually at a Blink-182 concert last night, so that will be my excuse for not catching
lucky bastard.
The Pats preseason.
Where was that at?
Rogers Center. Rogers Center is the best thing I've seen at the Rogers Center this season.
Yeah. I see what you did there. Listen, before we get into NFL, because it is going to dominate the show today. Tough one last night. And I guess, listen, if we were going to lose on Calgary -2.5, -3, whatever, from a guy in the West that pulls for the Bombers, nice to see Calgary at least lose. Really, really fun game, though. Tons of offense, easy on the over last night. So a great start. And then this game tonight, I'm just going to reset where we're at with these lines because it's been weird. Like yesterday when Dusty and I were doing the show, we had Saskatchewan a -1 favorite. Montreal comes out with the depth chart. Cody Fajardo is on the depth chart, but he's not starting the football game. And yet we've got it now Montreal -2. There has been some wild live movement. And then, of course, this Winnipeg BC game, which was Bombers -3 earlier in the week. Nathan Rourke comes back, Pat, and it's flipped 5.5 points. BC now a 2.5 point favorite at home against the Bombers on Sunday night.
It's been wild. A lot of it is we're seeing money come on different sides. A lot of it is the news. Obviously, Fajardo, just the fact that he is on the depth chart, I'm sure that kind of scares away some people, scares away the sports book. But that's kind of the nature of the beast that we're seeing with the CFL this year. As someone who's kind of been a lot more dialed in than I have in previous seasons, like the parity is there. That's one of the great things about the CFL. But like the lines have been so short for the most part, week in and week out. Like I can't recall, at least since I've been working at Coolbet, how many times in a week every single game or maybe one game wasn't set at the start of the week within a field goal. And because it's within that field goal, we're seeing it swing back and forth, back and forth. One team's favorite at the start of the week. By kickoff, they're a dog by 2.5 points, whatever it may be. But it's all staying within that, field goal range, which is just, it makes it that much more difficult to handicap. So I feel for our odds makers, but I do know a big thing with that BC game is the fact that now we know that Rourke, all likelihood, is going to play. We heard that earlier in the week that, when he did sign, all things considered, they were all in on this guy playing. That's tough. That's really tough. I know Rourke is the best quarterback Canadian prospect that we've seen in many, many years. He's a superstar in this league. I think he's got a bright future at him. Look what we saw him do when he was in this league with the Lions a couple of years ago. Sky's the limit for this guy. But that's a lot for a guy to come in. How many playbooks has this guy skimmed through over the past few weeks, going from NFL camp to NFL camp, and now back to a team that, yes, he's played with before, but I know there's been a lot of changes with that BC team since then. It's a lot for him to digest in less than a week and go out there on the field. If anyone can do it, it is Air Canada. It is Nathan Rourke. But that is a tall, tall task for a young man to come in and take over and win a game by more than a field goal.
Yeah, listen, and we saw these two teams play, 2 weeks ago, and the Bombers had what's basically a double bye because they played early in the week on the Thursday. They got the bye. Now they're playing on Sunday. It's going to be 16 days between games. So they'll be rested, although they might, considering the way that last game went with the 25-0 shutout, they might have liked to get right back at it. Anyways, Dusty's got
one thing on that though, huh? Sorry, you mentioned that. Yes, he probably want them to continue on, but with how banged up, the Bombers are, I don't know. I haven't checked the depth chart. I don't know if some of those bodies have come back. And
Kenny Lawler's back.
Well, that's huge right there. That's huge. 16 days off. You get Lawler back. Even the guys that maybe necessarily weren't out of the lineup that are playing bumped and bruised. This is the CFL, man. Like if you're not playing hurt, you're not playing injured, something is wrong because it is such a gruel and a grind. I think the 16 days off is going to do them wonders. And I have a hard time betting against Nathan Rourke, but man, oh man, this seems like a better spot for the Bombers than you probably could. I certainly wouldn't want to play them in a week. If you're going to get Nathan Rourke in this Lions team, you might as well get him this week. This is the best time to get at him because I think once he's familiar with that playbook, once he gets his feet under him, man, like the Lions fans are very lucky. You go from Vernon Adams to this guy, like that's quite the blessing. You arguably have the two most skilled quarterbacks in the entire CFL. Like that's just obscene. Everyone's
happy except probably VA because that is a tough pill to swallow after the start of the season. He's still, I think, the favorite for MOP, but he might not play very much for the rest of the season. I will say this. I think, gang, you might want to just jump on money lines. I mean, as Pat mentioned, all of these lines are so short. I mean, it's been going back and forth in and around a pick for Montreal and Saskatchewan. It's 2 points right now. Montreal's minus 125 on the money line. The Riders are plus 104. The Elks are minus 130, which is interesting. It's a bigger money line for Edmonton at minus 130, and yet the spread is only minus 1.5. Hamilton is plus 108 on the money line, and they're 1.5 point dogs at home. And then BC right now is at minus 143. The Bombers at plus 118. The Bomber number got as high as plus 125 yesterday. But you're still getting a pretty nice number considering there was a significant minus. Actually, I think it was about minus 143 when that game opened originally earlier on this week. So don't forget, if you haven't bet yet this weekend at Coolbet, whenever you're betting CFL, you'll have the opportunity for a 20% win boost on a parlay, on a single bet, total, whatever you like. Just click that green button. You don't really have to do anything other than that. And hopefully you'll win and get an extra 20% while you're at it. One other thing, speaking of great Coolbet promos, Fridays, we always mention the UFC promo. Gang, if you're interested in what should be a great UFC 105 headline by Izzy Adesanya and Dricus Duplessis, $25 bet. Make sure you just opt in on that, but a $25 bet gets you a free $25 bet on Monday. And guys, I'm pulling this up right now. And again, I'm pretty casual when it comes to UFC, but I do know Adesanya and Duplessis. We've been waiting for this fight for a while. And I mean, Jake, this is exactly what you want from a main card headliner. Basically a pick 'em. Duplessis minus 104 and Izzy Adesanya minus 112. I know Big Maple's in chat. If anyone's got a call on this fight, let us know in the chat. But I mean, literally, it looks like a coin flip right now, and should be a heck of a way to finish up this card down under in Perth.
Well, Huss, while we're on the topic of UFC, we also have a second UFC promotion running exclusively this week. I went over it yesterday on the Instagram. I did throw it up on the Twitter as well. Basically, what is happening there, it's a crossover campaign with our UFC slot. It's called UFC Gold Blitz Extreme. So this week, when you opt into that campaign, there's 3 different offers. So you go over to the campaign page, pick one of the offers. The first one's bet 15, get 25 free spins to that slot. You can bet 25 and get 50 free spins, or the big one is bet $50 on the UFC this weekend, and you get 125 free spins to the UFC Gold Blitz Extreme slot. So it's a new slot that we have going on over at Coolbet. It's super cool campaign that we're running, and it's exclusively this week for UFC 305. I know they were talking about it in the Den, I believe, the other day. So if you're going to bet on the UFC this weekend, check the promotions page before you do anything, because you're basically just throwing money away by not getting something back on this card.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Do you guys have a lean on either side of this one? The South African Duplessis or the style bender Izzy Adesanya?
I don't have a lean. I think this is a fight, and we see it in the fight game all the time. Like, you know, though there's no love lost between these two guys. These two guys really don't like each other. This is certainly a case where these two guys like actually do despise each other. There is bad blood. If you haven't watched yet, go on Twitter, watch the press conference. Things got heated, and Duplessis obviously calling out, you know, the style bender for being a fake African, because he's actually from New Zealand, but he says he's from from Africa. There's a lot of bad blood, some cheap shots thrown from both sides. So these are two guys that certainly do not like each other, which kind of leads me to believe that this isn't going to go the distance. I just don't. I see someone finishing the fight. Looking at that number, I believe the fight not to go the distance is minus 143, which is a little bit juicy. So, you know, for this one, maybe you just, it's right before the fight, you make your pick. Again, I'm not Big Maple. I'm not the sharpest MMA bettor. I love watching MMA. There's not too many better betting sports in a group of people.
For sure.
You know,
100%.
It's so much fun. We rally the fellas together, pick a side, and then just go at it. But that would be my lane. 143, a little bit juicy, but then you're just cheering for these guys to bash their heads in. So that would be one there. Looking at the under 4.5 rounds at minus 128. Again, something that you could look at. There's a couple of other bet cards as well. I'll quickly rip through while we're on USC.
Sure.
Finish the job. This is kind of what I was talking about. If you're just looking to have some fun, there's a couple of other really big bouts as well. So the main event, that one not to go the distance. Tuivasa and Rosenstruck, that one not to go the distance. That's going to be another good fight. Those are two absolute units squaring off in that fight. And then Gilles Lang and Carlos Prates. that one not to go the distance. When you parlay those together at plus 187, you get that up to plus 215. And then there's your shrimp on the Barbie. Those are the three Australian fighters, because this fight is in Down Under. Tuivasa, Urchik, and Tafa all parlayed together. It's boosted from 707 almost to 800 at plus 798. So that one would be a really fun one there. Cheer for the hometown crowd. Tuivasa is going to win. You know he's going to hammer a shoey back. So it will be a fun bet to ride on, no doubt.
Jake, any feel about this one?
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking at what Big Maple was saying, and you know, Patty kind of laid it out pretty well. He's like, you can't go wrong betting on either Dricus or the Style Bender in this fight. One of the biggest grud matches in a long time. So I don't know. Feels like a flip a coin fight for me. I think if I was going by just name alone, for me personally, I'd probably go Style Bender. I'm a little more familiar with his game, but that's no disrespect to Duplessis. It's just not being a huge UFC guy. I don't want to sit here and act like I know their style types. So, yeah, probably Style Bender for me, but it sounds like you could probably go either way on this one.
I did a little bit of research on this one today, and I leaned on the best around my guy, Aaron Bronstetter. And Bronstetter actually is going to be on WST today. We'll be talking about this fight and some of the other big stories, find out what the hell's going on with Conor McGregor, the question that never seems to be answered right now. He did lean on, and this is funny that Big Maple mentioned this, Dricus by submission is a pretty intriguing one. He hasn't lost at this weight class since he was 20 years old. 10 years he's been undefeated. And the one thing about Izzy is that, I mean, part of the reason why he became such a huge star, he was a fighting machine. I think he had 5 title defenses or 5 title fights over the course of 16 months. He hasn't fought in 11 months. So this is a long, long time for him to be off. But even in his previous fights, when he's been going against stronger like wrestlers, they have had some success getting him down. So I think I might ride with Big Maple and my guy Bronstetter and jump on that submission bet. Again, check the promotions for the UFC, and the most no-brainer wager of the week is the $25 free bet. But check out everything else the guys were talking about in the promos. All right, guys. Well, let's get to it. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and we're going to be able to kick this around for the next couple of weeks as we get closer to NFL season. But right now, heading into week 2 of the preseason, although I guess it's already started, when we're looking at the NFL futures, we'll focus more on players in the next couple of weeks. But let's focus on some teams right now. And Pat, I'll start with you. I know you've been spending some time perusing the regular season win totals. What's catching your eye right now from the book at Coolbet as to where we should be going on over or under a few juicy NFL team season bets for the upcoming campaign?
Yeah, I've been just really enjoying just scrolling through the tab at Coolbet, seeing what's available, checking, doing some research, and this pick here actually could be 2 bets. I don't suggest doubling up here. More or less, maybe just bet one if you would rather a little more value or if you want to go with the safer play. And to be quite honest, I like both of them. I said I suggest not doing both of them, but I think I'm going to bet both of them. And this is the LA Rams over 8.5 wins at minus 139. The other number you could get is them to make the playoffs at plus 105. In 6 of Sean McVay's first 7 seasons as a head coach, the Rams have won at least 9 games. The only year was that really bad year in 2020 where, you know, Stafford gets hurt, Donald gets hurt, Kupp gets hurt, and that was just the big names. They finished 5-12. But besides that, Sean McVay has run an unbelievable program with this Rams team. So for me, nobody, absolutely nobody, including myself, thought that they were going to go 10-7 last year. They had the second youngest roster in the NFL. Puka Nacua was a standout rookie, a guy that came onto the scene. I think he's only going to take steps forward. Yeah, I know they lose Donald to retirement, but this offense with a healthy Stafford, with a healthy Kupp, and Puka Nacua really coming on, Kyron Williams as well, a star running back from Notre Dame. I think this team is a team that can do some damage with a really tough schedule. But they also play the Cardinals twice. I know a lot of people think that they're going to take a step forward, but still, there's 2 games against them. A Vikings team that is led by now Sam Darnold. The Saints, and I'm sorry, Jake, but the Patriots, that's 4 to 5 wins right there. I know the rest of their schedule is difficult, but it's Sean McVay, it's Matt Stafford. This is a team that has just always won, found ways to win. I think there's another 4 and 5 wins there. So for me, LA Rams over 8.5 and them to make the playoffs as well. That's probably my favorite team bet so far.
Jake, what about you? What's your favorite one on the board?
It's crazy. When Patty started that, I thought he was taking the team that I kind of pinpointed as we were entering today's show. I'm big on the Indianapolis Colts, man. I think they could have a really strong season. I like Anthony Richardson. A healthy Jonathan Taylor could be huge for this team. We don't got to worry about no contract disputes anymore with him. Michael Pittman is one of those guys where I feel like he's super underrated, but super reliable. They brought back their entire O-line, which I think is super important for them. It was a good O-line last year. They were 9-8 last year with Gardner Minshew. I know we were high on Minshew, Huss. We talk about it almost every single week.
He wins games.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Anthony Richardson, a healthy Anthony Richardson, and obviously that's a big part of this, could be outstanding for the Colts. They were third in the division last year, which means they'll get a little bit of an easier schedule. And I think we could see some regression from Houston. I know that's not that's a bit of a hot take with how good CJ Stroud was last year, but I mean he's still young. It's still early in his career, as is Richardson. So I like them to make the playoffs. Number is plus 150. Their win total set at 8.5. I like them to be over 500. That's even money. And I don't mind a little sprinkle on the division winner. I know we're going to touch on some division winners.
Wow.
But plus 325 to win the division. I think, I'm not sold on Lawrence and the Jags. I'm still a little skeptical there. Houston, I think, will be good, absolutely. But I think Colts get a bit of an easier schedule. I'm going to go through the Houston schedule here in a second. Colts get a little bit of an easier schedule. And I think they got a chance to get 10 wins and possibly win this division. Listen to this down the stretch for Houston. To finish the season, Week 11 at Dallas. Then they get Tennessee at home. That should be a win. Then they got to go to Jacksonville. They get the bye. Then they got Miami at home, Kansas City on the road, Baltimore at home, and then they finish at Tennessee to finish the season. So they might be looking really good early, but don't be surprised if they kind of falter off. Level out near the end of the season and Colts come up from behind. So I think them all 3 spots. I think the win total is your safest one at even money. Playoffs at plus 150, I don't mind either. And to win the division, a little sprinkle at plus 325. Give me the Colts this year, boys. I like them.
It's funny you mentioned that. The Texans are, one of the few, I guess there's only 5 teams that are minus something to win their division. The Falcons are now up to minus 132. Kind of reminds me of the Saints last year in the same position in that completely mid NFC South. But the Texans right now, after being the longest shot, and again, we talk about this every year, there's 1 or 2 teams that has a big number right there in front of them that's going to win the division. It happens every year in the NFL. Last year, it was the Texans. This year, they're minus 115, and the Titans 11-1 to win that division.
I'm sorry. Now the only thing I'm going to be able to see when Jake was talking football this year in the Colts, I don't know if you guys saw that video circling earlier. This is our team.
This is our team. This is our.
We
Colts.
love them.
That's gonna be JVM all season long.
Listen, if the Colts win the division, I'll remake that video. If the Colts win the division, how about that?
Mark it down. It's on YouTube. You can't find a way. We need that face swap app right now to get ready for week 1. You can post that on along with
the one other thing I forgot to mention. They had a couple nice additions in the draft as well. They got Adonai Mitchell from I believe he was a Texas wide receiver, and they added a guy on the defense, Laiatu Latu from the UCLA. I believe that was their first round pick, edge rusher. Should be a nice bolster to an already strong pass rush. So Colts, baby, let's go.
All right, my favorite win total of the season, and this was a team that I picked last year. I picked them to make the playoffs. They came through, and I mean, they're about as reliable a team and a reliable coaching staff as there is, and it is the Pittsburgh Steelers again. You'll remember last year, we're looking at this division. I had the Steelers making the playoffs, and maybe the best future I had last year was the Cincinnati Bengals to miss the playoffs, and that was like at plus 250 or so. Listen, anything can happen when you lose your starting quarterback. Here's the thing with Pittsburgh, though. Like, the win total is 8.5 for the season, and the over is minus 110. I mean, it's right there. Mike Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons. Like, they find a way to win. And listen, their quarterback situation was so bad last year, and they still managed to have a winning record and get into the playoffs. Now, it's a fascinating season shaping up for Pittsburgh in that they've got a hell of a defense. They've got a lot of great players around them. They're only spending like $7 million or something like that at the quarterback position. And they've got two guys coming in that are a hell of a lot better than what they had last year. Incredibly motivated to make their mark as a starter. I mean, for Russ, he's going to get the opportunity to start right out of the gate. Apparently, he's had a really good camp. And Justin Fields is going to be pushing behind him, and these guys are going to need to perform. Now, they are in a tough division. I mean, there's no easy games in the AFC North. I mean, the Browns are legit, and the Bengals and the Ravens are right there. But the bottom line is those teams, they'll split their games. Pittsburgh just finds a way to win. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be great. They're the longest shot in that division to win. They're 6-1 to win the AFC North. And listen, I'll make a case that is some good value. I think the real number probably should be maybe closer to like 4-1. But as far as a win total, if you're telling me that Mike Tomlin just needs to win 9 of 17 games, which he does every single year, I'm taking it. And I think the ceiling for the Steelers, to be honest with you, is legitimately much higher than it's been in the last couple of years because of what they've done at the quarterback position. Now, we're not going to have this situation next year. I mean, if Russ plays really well and they need to sign him, he'll be getting a hell of a lot more than the $1 million he signed for because of everything that he was getting from the Denver Broncos after cutting him. And the same with Justin Fields. But I think that they've got, and I guess the other big story is we've been waiting for this Brandon Ayuk trade to happen. I would say get in right now. Even if it doesn't happen, I'm perfectly fine with the Steelers over 8.5 wins. I think that if they get Brandon Ayuk, that number is going to either be juiced or potentially go up a little bit to 9 or 9.5. So right now, give me the Steelers. And while we're talking about the team playoff odds, Pittsburgh right now is 190 plus 190. I mean, listen, they found a way to do it. There's the extra spot right now. There will be a 9-8 team that gets in. I think there's some good value, but I mean, listen, if you just want like a safe bet, I want to cash this, give me the Pittsburgh Steelers over 8.5 wins to get things going. That if I was making one win total, that's it. But I do have some others, and I'm sure you do, Pat. What else is attractive to you right now as we're a couple weeks away?
Well, it's funny you say the Steelers because that make the playoffs is one of my favorite ones, and I totally agree with you. Like I was trying to like write notes in like telling folks why they should make this bet, digging into numbers, and the only thing I can say is Mike Tomlin. Like he's never had a losing record, never not made the playoffs. Like every year, and let's not forget Russ Wilson looked significantly better in that second half of that season. Like he was way better. That offense was way better. So. I agree with you. That's one of my bets. It's a little, it's one of my favorite playoff bets, but the total also, that is one that you could definitely look at. But sticking with the totals, we're not on the playoff odds just yet. I've got a couple unders. I'm going to start with one that maybe might not be too popular, but the Philadelphia Eagles under 10.5 wins. This team's record looked way better than it should have been last year. They were one of the luckiest teams in the entire NFL. They did a really good job winning close games, especially at the start of the year. And you could spin zone that as a good team finding ways to win. But I really thought they were playing above their heads and really just found ways to win. But halfway through that season, it was an absolute nightmare. And you could just see the true colors showing for this team into the playoffs when they lost in the wild card. And the writing was on the wall. They were 8-3 in one possession games. And it's now the second straight season that they're going to have to deal with losing not one, but two coordinators in the offseason. And they lost more than just their coordinators. Boy, they lost a lot. The heart and soul of their team in Jason Kelce, the heartbeat of the tush push. DeAndre Swift is gone. Hassan Reddick, gone. Fletcher Cox, gone. Kevin Byron, gone. That is a lot of veteran leadership out the door, and who is coming in. And the way things finished last year, put that into it as well. I think the Eagles take a big step back this year. I think they could still possibly make the playoffs with 10, 9, 8 wins. Probably not 8 wins, but 10 or 9 wins. They could still get there. I just don't see this team doing the same thing again, pulling the wool over our eyes and getting 11 wins. I don't see it. I'm sorry, Eagles fans. I just don't see it. So give me the under 10.5 at -110.
I'm just looking at Philly's schedule as well. And you mean like they start off against the Green Bay Packers on that Friday night game. They've got Atlanta, who people are expecting much more. They do start at home, and then they roll into the South. They got Cleveland at home, at the Giants, but then go through Cincinnati, home to Jacksonville. That's no joke. At Dallas, they still have to go to the Rams, at Baltimore. They got Carolina and Pittsburgh, and then they finish in the division. And the one thing with those divisional games, like even when Washington sucks, they win a game against Philly every year. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be tough. I mean, to sweep that will be difficult. So I'm sort of with you as well. And listen, you know me, I'm a Sirianni hater. I think there's a lot of people within the Eagles fan base that are Sirianni haters. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bunch of guys in that room that are Sirianni haters. And he's on a short leash right now. And you mentioned Jason Kelce. I really do think that he was a guy that kept that room together. You saw, even within the offense, some, shall we say, crossed wires with Hurts, with Sirianni. I do wonder how that team looks. Although, apparently, just Big Dom runs the show now. Hey, they changed the title, so he can be on the sideline right now. So maybe Big Dom will take care of it. Jake, what about you? You got another win total that you like on either side?
Yeah, this one might be a little bit more on the chalky side. A team expected to win the division, a team expected to be solid once again. I don't mind the Lions at 10.5. Dusty's Lions. They're a 12-win team a season ago, and fairly impressive kind of throughout the season. Obviously, they went to a NFC Championship. That's a big step. I like the talent on this team. I don't mind Jared Goff. I think the coaching is really strong. I think they're building something in Detroit. And I just looked at their schedule. They started off the season with 3 of their first 4 games at home. The game they got to go on the road is Arizona, which I think is winnable. So, I mean, we could see them start the season 3-1, if not 4-0. Then they go into the bye. They got to go to Dallas, to Minnesota. Well, we've seen what's happened in Minnesota over the last couple of days here. That'll be an interesting case. I think that's a winnable game. They got Tennessee at home. I like them there. They got to go to Green Bay. That's always a tough one. They'll have to go to Chicago as well. But I think I could find 11 wins on here. They will have to play San Fran late in the season. They do have to play Buffalo as well, and they'll also play my boys, the Colts. They actually play the AFC East. They play 3 straight games against AFC East opponents at Houston, home to Jacksonville, and then at Indianapolis. So that'll be an interesting little stretch. But I think I can find 11 wins for them on this schedule, even if they split with Green Bay and Chicago for that matter. I think you just go easy, over 10.5. For the Lions. I think it's -110. The other one I was going to go to, and I'm not going to go deep into this one, I think it's a little too juicy for me, but I don't mind the Chargers at 8.5. And it's strictly the Harbaugh effect. I just think he can win football games and get the most out of his guys, but a little juicy at -152. So I won't officially lock that one in. I'll go with the Lions.
Well, and the one thing about the Chargers that I think on paper, absolutely, they'll be better. They're in a division with the rebuilding Broncos and the Raiders, who I'm going to get to in a moment. That plantar fasciitis of Justin Herbert really does make me nervous, because all of a sudden, if it's Easton Stick time, I don't think we're talking about a 9-win team. But listen, as a Chiefs guy, I'm expecting that this team is going to contend and be a problem in a year or two. But I think we'll start. I'm sort of with you. I think we'll start seeing the other. Listen, I'm going to stay there, and I just mentioned the Raiders, and If you're telling me I can not only bet the under on the Raiders win total, but get plus money on it, put me at the front of the line. The Raiders win total is 6.5, plus 120 on the under. And I'll roll. First of all, I mean, I'm not sure that they got significantly better over the course of this season. They still don't really have a quarterback. And listen, I love Minshew. Minshew's a guy that can, as we said before, he can win you games when you have the opportunity to win. I mean, they're going into most of these games at such a deficit talent-wise. And listen, I know Antonio Pierce got the guys all fired up and, got some good spirit back in the room. Like, you're going up against Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton in your 6 divisional games. Like, even if we give them 2 wins in the division, say they can split against the Raiders and split against the Chargers, tell me where these other wins are coming from. Starting on the road at the Chargers, at Baltimore. We'll give them a win at home against Carolina. Then they've got Cleveland. That's going to be a tough game. I certainly think Cleveland is a better team on paper. I mean, maybe they get it. Even if you're there, they go to Denver. They've got the Steelers. Then at the Rams, home to the Chiefs, at the Bengals, at the Dolphins, home to Denver, at the Chiefs. Then they go Tampa, Atlanta, Jacksonville, in New Orleans, always a tough place to play, finishing it off against the Chargers at home. I don't see where 7 wins are on the table for the Raiders. The fact that it's plus 120, I think, is a steal right now. And obviously, folks who know me well, a season under on the Raiders, I'm not sure I'll enjoy making or following a bet more through the entire season this year. So, Raider Nation, under 6.5 wins, under 6.5 wins with the plus 120. Patty, you got one more before we move over to some playoff talk?
I do, but Jake, can you leave the room? You might want to leave the room for this one here.
See you guys.
New England Patriots under 4.5 wins. And I don't know if I see 3 wins on this schedule. What's up, Jake? I'm sorry, but they play the Bengals, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Texans, the Jags, the Rams, the Colts. You could say the Cardinals, the Bears, the Chargers, maybe a chance against those guys. Sure, they eke out a win against one of those divisional rivals.
I don't see them favored in any game you mentioned.
No, not one. And let's not forget, this is the first time they're playing without Bill Belichick since 1999. And say what you will about the way his tenure finished, I think he's worth 2, 3, 4 wins. I also think in these close games, when they're close, he finds ways to win, or at least is able to keep them into games. I think there's going to be a lot of blowouts. Drake May, don't get me wrong, really like what I saw out of him in college. I was big on him. I'm continuing to be big on him. But I don't think Drake May is going to turn your franchise around right away. I also don't think it is in your best interest to play Drake May right now because I think he could get killed. That offensive line is brutal. He has no playmakers around him. There is nothing that could happen with playing him. Sure, Jacoby Brissett probably can pick up a couple of wins, but this team is just at a deficit skill-wise pretty much week in and week out. I think this is a team that could be picking 1st or 2nd overall next year. So there is no way that this team finished with 5 wins, and I'm very sorry, Jake, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I almost went that route with you, Patty, to be honest. I don't think there's any need to win football games at this point. Like, it's not going to get them anywhere. They're not a team that's going to win a Super Bowl. The roster is poorly structured. So I totally get it. I think I'm absolutely fine with them being, a 2, 3, 4 win team and picking early in the draft and continuing to build a roster properly. There's a lot of great years in New England. We know that. You could build anyone around Tom Brady, and it worked for so long. But I think it's time to do this the right way. I think they almost tried to jump the gun with the Mac Jones thing. And, we saw how that kind of shit hit the fan there. I think it's time to really redo this. Drake May's young. I think he's a strong quarterback. I think it's a Jacoby Brissett year. But like you said, I think it's, maybe 3 wins, and they're picking 1, 2, 3 at the lowest, I'd hope. So, yeah, I get it. Huss said off the top of the show, he's like, "Oh, it's a great time of the year. Everyone's optimistic." I'm not optimistic. I'm gonna watch. If Drake May's playing, I'll probably watch a little bit more. But if it's Brissett, I'll probably just be watching Red Zone most of the season. And I'm fine with that.
Best case scenario for the Patriots is that they lose a ton of games, but May gets a ton of playing time and shows that he's going to be the guy. They go under 4.5 wins. I don't think there's any other team that's going to be sniffing 2 or 3. They get the number 1 overall pick. They already have their quarterback and then can trade a premium high pick for a ton of picks or players and then completely supercharge the rebuild after 1 year. I've got a couple, and I'm just going to throw these out because the number is the exact same, and there's a connection between these two teams. Over 9.5 at -133 for the Green Bay Packers and the New York Jets. You see the connection here.
Ooh.
I really like the Jets. In that they somehow won 7 games last year with Zach Wilson and whoever else was playing after Rodgers got hurt. They've added a bunch of players, and this is go time. I mean, Rodgers has to get it done this year. Robert Saleh has to get it done this year. They've got incredible talent on the defensive side of the football. Breece Hall's healthy. They've added to the receiving core. Listen, I know the division is tough, but I think it's way more wide open than it's ever been before. Miami, I think Miami blew their chance last year. They needed to clinch that AFC East. They didn't get it done. They had to go to Kansas City. They're starting from scratch in a very, very tough division. They're all going to probably beat the Patriots, and they'll probably all beat each other. But I really do think that the Jets are poised to get to 10 wins, to be a playoff team, and with the caveat, as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy. And as far as the Packers go, I think we saw the youngest team in the league find their way at the end of the season, the second half last year. And I mean, listen, the job that Jordan Love did on the Cowboys in the playoffs, I think that just puts them in a way different stratosphere going in. I think they challenge for the division. I mean, I know Detroit's got a lot of talent on it, and the Bears are going to be better. But we'll get to division totals. I think Green Bay is very live to win the division. Love them at 10 wins as well. Now, just moving over to playoff odds. And again, if you're just going to Coolbet, click on NFL into the futures tabs. There's all sorts of different topics. We're focusing on team playoffs right now. I mentioned Pittsburgh. I think the value on Pittsburgh at +190 is phenomenal. Patty, you mentioned another team that I really like to be playing in the postseason, and that's the Rams. The Rams are plus money to make the playoffs right now at +105. And it's funny, like the Bears, the Rams have lower odds in the NFC than the Bears. And listen, I think Caleb Williams has looked great. I think they've done it might be a little bit quick to just start planting the Bears in the playoffs. So two of my favorites right off the bat, if we're looking at plus money plays, the Rams at +105, and we mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers at +190. The one other team, and I'll get your thoughts on this, that is really confounding to me is the Saints. Like, Carr was just so bad last year that they really played themselves out of any contention. We end up seeing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rolling in at the end and then actually, doing some damage, beating Philly in the playoffs. If they can get any sort of just NFL average quarterbacking, I think that they'll be in the mix. I don't think I'm ready to go with the +175, but I will say last year they were like -200 or something. It's not a lot different. If you believe in Atlanta, Atlanta basically is the Saints of last year. Everyone's just sort of handing them over the division. I'm going to kind of wait and see on all of that. But, the Saints to me is an intriguing number just because of how big it is at +175. I just can't trust Derek Carr at this point yet to actually pull the trigger. But for plus money, Steelers and Rams to make the playoffs are two I like. Patty, what about you?
Well, I already said that the Steelers was one of my picks. The other one, it's the team that you just mentioned in there. It's the Chicago Bears to miss the playoffs at plus money. Like, that is a real sentence that I just said. Plus money for the Chicago Bears to miss the playoffs. And I get it, Bears fans, be excited about Caleb Williams. He's electric on the field, eccentric off the field. He's a dual threat with a cannon of an arm. That being said, he's still a rookie. And you said it, Huss, like, can we pump the tires? We have seen this before. Quarterbacks can come and be QB1. They can be the guy, but to turn it around in one season and make the playoffs is incredibly challenging, especially for a guy that in some big moments while playing for USC kind of crumbled down the stretch and crumbled under pressure. I think they're going to be vastly improved, but they're in a very tough division. This is an offensive line that gave up 50 sacks last year. A lot of people are saying this is the easiest schedule or one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. They still play the Texans. They still play the Rams, who you and I are really high on, Huss. They play the Lions twice, obviously, in their division, and they also play the 49ers. That doesn't include the Jags and the Colts, who both should be teams that take a step forward, and then the Packers twice. Be excited for the future, Bears fan. Be excited that Caleb Williams is possibly going to be the guy, but I think there is still some pain that has to come before you get to those sunshine and roses.
Jake, before we go, you got a playoff bet or two that you want to throw out?
Yeah, listen, from all the things we talked about, I'm looking down this list. I'm looking at a plus money to miss. I don't mind the Miami Dolphins to miss. We talked about the Jets taking a step with Rodgers. That AFC, like I just went through the list of teams in the AFC. You could argue for 12 teams to make the playoffs in the AFC, and only 7 are going to make it. So teams are going to miss. And if the Bills, the Bills remain where they are, they win the division, or the Jets, that's 2 teams there. I think 2 teams from the South can make it in, one of Houston, Indy, or Jacksonville. You made a great case for Pittsburgh, Huss. I think Cincy and Baltimore are both live. Kansas City's making the playoffs. So, I mean, someone's going to be there's going to be a handful of teams that were like, oh my God, I can't believe that much talent didn't make the playoffs. And I'm just never really big on the Dolphins, especially late in the year. They got to go to some cold weather games. It's a lot different for them. So give me the Dolphins plus 125. I don't mind that. And then, I talked about already my Colts at plus 150. Definitely a team that I like. I don't mind the Chargers to miss either. I know I did say I like their win total at 8.5, but I just mentioned all those AFC teams. It's going to be really tough to.
There'll be a 9-8 team that misses.
Sure.
There'll be a 9-8 team that misses.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's kind of what I was saying.
You're going to be like, oh my God, like if Jacksonville misses, you're going to be like, wow, Jacksonville, like that's a good roster. Or Pittsburgh, we could probably make the argument, they go 9-8, they might miss too. But yeah, there's a lot of teams in the AFC that I think can make the playoffs. So I think Dolphins is the one I got my eyes on, plus 125 to miss.
Yeah, and
sorry, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
It was a division winner that I had in my mind. I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid on this team because I think everyone's like, and you mentioned them a few times, the Falcons, like I don't want to get in on them. Minus 132, it's not the best number for early in the season. We don't even know what everyone's going to look like. But they do start the season home to Pittsburgh, and then on the road in Philly, and then home to Kansas City. I think if they start the season 1-2, go take a look at their division odds again. Maybe you get like an even money, and then I think that's when you pick it up. They finish the season, I think, real easy. Listen to this. Off the bye, so they got to go to Denver, which is tough, but then they go into the bye. They got the Chargers at home, Mini on the road in Las Vegas, the Giants at home, at Washington, and then Carolina at home to finish the season. I genuinely think they could finish the season 5-1.
Yeah, no, it's a nice spot. And speaking of the end of the season, just on Montreal,
no bad.
My thoughts on this Atlanta team. How do they go from cool, what they did?
Like everyone's like, I don't know.
Minus 132 to win the division like this. Like this is why I'm either doing what Huss said and maybe take a look at the Saints. But again, their quarterback play scares the living shit out of me. I like the Bucs to win at plus 325. They did it last year. This team turned things around in the second half of the season. Baker Mayfield is a guy that I'm sorry, man. I just don't buy this Falcons team that they can run away with it. And sure, maybe they win the division, but they're not going to win by 2 or 3 games. Like, no, this is just too much disrespect to the Buccaneers and to the Saints, and just giving way too much credit for Kirk Cousins and this Atlanta team to be minus money to win a division. I just don't buy it. I would much rather take a sprinkle and take a flyer on a Bucks or a Saints team. Hope they catch fire. Maybe Baker Mayfield can catch lightning in a bottle from last year. The defense is great. You look at their defensive line, one of the most underrated D lines. I could not. You couldn't pay me. Couldn't pay me.
I think that's why you wait, though. I think that's why you wait, because I think they start the season 1-2, and then people get a little bit more down on them. Possibly 0-3, and then people get a little bit more down on them, and then all of a sudden, you're getting a plus 120 or a plus 150, and I think that's when you jump on the Falcons, because I do think, like, if it's a healthy Kirk Cousins, he wins regular season games, guys. I'm not trusting him when he gets to the playoffs, but he's known to win regular season games. They got a good insurance piece in Penix, and they got really good pieces around Cousins that I think, like, I don't know. I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid, but then I watched
You're drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
A Falcons rundown, and I'm like, this team could be awesome.
Got a full picture.
Like,
you're about to crash through a brick wall going, oh, yeah. It's like the old things. And just a quick note on Miami. If that team needs a win to make the playoffs or hit their total in the week 17 and 18, we all remember how they played in cold weather against Kansas City, at Cleveland, at New York, December 29th and January 5th. You better stack those wins earlier. Fellas, we're just about up against it. Have an awesome weekend. Gang, NFL futures are live. Preseason odds, if you want to bet on the preseason, that's up there as well this week. And of course, if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code LOCKSHOP for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Fellas, enjoy the weekend. We'll get the band back together on Monday, recap it all, and get into a few more NFL futures. Thanks for doing this. Folks, WST's coming up, but you can join me over on Winnipeg Sports Talk in a few minutes. Otherwise, keep it locked right here. Matawanek taking over with more as the fun continues on Edmonton Sports Talk next.